Victor Cousin, 1792 to 1867, was one of those rare figures who shaped not only philosophy but also education and public life in 19th-century France. Born in Paris during a time of political upheaval, he lived through the French Revolution's aftermath, the rise and fall of Napoleon, and the reshaping of Europe. These turbulent years forced him to think deeply about freedom, responsibility, and how ideas guide societies. Cousin was a philosopher, but he wasn't trapped in abstract speculation. He believed philosophy should serve both the individual and the nation. That's why he dedicated himself not only to teaching at the Sorbonne but also to reforming the French education system, ensuring that schools were not just places of rote learning but centers of moral and intellectual growth. Perhaps his greatest intellectual contribution was eclecticism, the idea that truth is scattered across different philosophical systems. Instead of clinging to one school of thought, Cousin encouraged thinkers to take the best from each and weave them together into a richer understanding of life. Today, when we live in a world divided by ideologies, religions, and cultural differences, Cousin's wisdom feels more urgent than ever. His life and work offer lessons about curiosity, freedom, responsibility, and the power of education. Let's explore 10 life lessons from Victor Cousin's stories and reflections that can still guide us today. 1. Truth is never one-sided. Victor Cousin's philosophy of eclecticism wasn't just a clever theory, it was his answer to centuries of intellectual conflict. For him, the history of philosophy wasn't a war where one system wins and the rest are forgotten. Instead, he saw it as a grand conversation, where each thinker contributes a piece of the truth. When Cousin studied Plato, he admired his idealism. From Aristotle, he took logic and realism. From Descartes, the clarity of reason. From Kant, the rigor of duty. From Hegel, the sense of historical development. He didn't dismiss any of them outright. Instead, he asked, what part of their insight can help us understand reality better? Backhand index pointing right. Why this matters for us. We live in a time where people love to choose sides. Politics, religion, even lifestyles are treated as team sports. But the danger of this all-or-nothing thinking is that we blind ourselves to wisdom outside our bubble. Cousin's eclecticism reminds us that every perspective carries some light, even if it also casts shadows. Backhand index pointing right. Story connection. Imagine being in a room with 10 people describing a mountain. One sees the snowy peak, another the rocky base, another the forested slopes. Each tells the truth from their angle, but none tells the whole. That's Cousin's view of philosophy, and of life itself. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. Don't reduce truth to one voice. Collect wisdom like a traveler gathers souvenirs, not to stay stuck in one culture, but to build a richer worldview that embraces many. 2. Education shapes nations. As Minister of Public Instruction in France, Cousin had immense power over schools. He didn't treat this lightly. For him, education was not just about teaching children facts, it was about forming citizens who could carry a nation forward. Cousin traveled to Germany and studied their school systems closely. He admired how German education emphasized discipline, moral instruction, and respect for teachers. He brought back these ideas and implemented reforms in France, raising the standards of teaching and expanding the reach of education. Backhand index pointing right. Why this matters today. Think about the problems we face now: inequality, ignorance, division. At their root, many of these issues stem from failures in education. Cousin's reforms remind us that schools are not simply training grounds for jobs, they are workshops for character, citizenship, and humanity itself. Backhand index pointing right. Story connection. When asked why he valued education so highly, Cousin once remarked that teachers are the engineers of human souls. He meant that by shaping young minds, they shape the future of nations. Backhand index pointing right life lesson: if you want to change the future, don't just chase wealth or politics, invest in education. Support schools, respect teachers, and keep learning yourself. That's how nations are truly built. 3. Freedom and responsibility go hand in hand. Cousin believed in human freedom with a passion. He rejected the idea that humans are just products of fate, instinct, or environment. But for him, freedom wasn't about recklessness, it was about moral responsibility. Backhand index pointing right example: a child who insists, "I'm free to eat only candy," may feel liberated, but their freedom destroys their health. Similarly, a society where everyone does whatever they want, without accountability, collapses into chaos. Cousin insisted that freedom only makes sense when guided by reason and conscience. Backhand index pointing right: why this matters for us. In modern culture, freedom is often misunderstood. People say, "It's my life, my choice," but forget that every choice shapes not only their destiny but also affects others. Cousin would challenge us: are you using your freedom to uplift or to harm? Backhand index pointing right life lesson: don't confuse freedom with impulse. Real freedom is the ability to choose wisely, even when it's hard. 4. Balance idealism with practicality. Cousin admired lofty ideas, but he was also a man of action. He loved German philosophy, especially Hegel's sweeping vision of history, but he refused to lose himself in abstract speculation. For him, philosophy had to touch the real world, education, politics, and everyday life. Backhand index pointing right example: while other philosophers built grand theories about the soul or metaphysics, Cousin asked, "How will this help us train better teachers? How will this guide citizens to live responsibly?" Backhand index pointing right: why this matters today. How many times do we get stuck in big ideas that never leave paper? Think of business plans that never launch, personal dreams that never leave the mind, or theories about society that never reach people. Cousin warns against this trap: knowledge without action is wasted potential. Backhand index pointing right life lesson: dream big, but make it useful. Philosophy, vision, and ideals must be tied to real-world change. 5. Build bridges, not walls. Cousin's eclecticism wasn't only about philosophy, it was about human relations. He believed that differences shouldn't divide us, but enrich us. He built bridges between schools of thought that had been enemies for centuries, showing that harmony was possible without uniformity. Backhand index pointing right example: where others saw rivalry, Plato versus Aristotle, rationalism versus empiricism, Cousin saw complementary truths. His teaching at the Sorbonne brought together philosophies that students once thought irreconcilable. Backhand index pointing right modern connection: look at the world today, polarized, divided, tribal. Politics, religion, and even social media communities often build walls. Cousin's approach is revolutionary: instead of asking who's right, ask, what truth does each bring? Backhand index pointing right life lesson: don't let differences breed division. Seek connection. Build bridges of understanding that allow truth to flow freely between people and cultures. 6. The teacher's role is sacred. Cousin held teachers in the highest regard. He insisted they were not just transmitters of knowledge, but sculptors of human souls. In his reforms, he worked to raise teacher training, salaries, and social respect. Backhand index pointing right example: he introduced competitive examinations for teachers in France, ensuring that teaching wasn't a fallback career but a respected profession for the best minds. Backhand index pointing right. Modern connection. In our digital world, where Google and AI give instant answers, some people think teachers are less important. Cousin would argue the opposite. Facts are cheap, but wisdom is priceless, and teachers are the ones who turn raw information into real growth. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. If you are ever in a position to teach, whether in a classroom, a workplace, or at home, treat it as a sacred responsibility. And if you are learning, honor your teachers. Their influence goes beyond what you can see. 7. History holds lessons for today. Cousin loved studying the history of philosophy. He didn't just read it as old texts, but as a living conversation across centuries. Each thinker, he said, was a link in the chain of human thought. Backhand index pointing right. Example. He taught his students that understanding Descartes required knowing Plato, Aristotle, and Augustine. Philosophy wasn't about starting fresh, it was about joining an ongoing dialogue. Backhand index pointing right. Modern connection. Too often, people act like history is irrelevant. But Cousin's method shows us that forgetting the past is like cutting off your roots, you lose stability and nourishment. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. Don't ignore history. It contains warnings, wisdom, and patterns. If you want to move forward wisely, keep looking back. 8. Spirituality and reason can coexist. Cousin lived in an age of conflict between religion and rationalism. Many philosophers tried to pit them against each other. Cousin, however, argued for harmony. He believed reason leads us to truth, but it doesn't exclude the possibility of spiritual intuition and faith. Backhand index pointing right. Example. He respected religious traditions but insisted they must not be blind dogma, they should harmonize with rational inquiry. For him, rejecting spirituality entirely was as shallow as rejecting reason. Backhand index pointing right. Modern connection. Today, people often feel torn between science and faith. Cousin's wisdom offers peace, the two don't have to fight. Science explains how, spirituality explores why. Together, they give us a fuller vision of life. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. Don't be forced to choose between heart and mind. Let reason sharpen your intellect, and let spirituality enrich your soul. 9. Culture elevates humanity. For Cousin, culture was not optional. He saw literature, philosophy, and art as the highest achievements of human spirit. Without them, society risks falling into materialism and mediocrity. Backhand index pointing right. Example. As Minister of Education, he pushed for schools to teach not only practical subjects like science, but also the humanities, history, philosophy, and art. He believed these disciplines refined character and cultivated higher values. Backhand index pointing right. Modern connection. Today, many systems push STEM, science, tech, engineering, math, as the only useful fields. But Cousin reminds us, culture is what keeps us human. A society without art, literature, or philosophy may be efficient, but it won't be meaningful. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. Feed your spirit as well as your mind. Read books, enjoy art, engage with philosophy. Culture elevates the human soul. 10. Live as a student of life. Cousin never stopped learning. Even after becoming one of France's most respected professors, he continued reading, questioning, and expanding his thought. His eclectic method was less a philosophy than a lifestyle of lifelong learning. Backhand index pointing right. Example. He often revised his lectures, adding insights from new readings. He showed his students that even a teacher must remain a learner. Backhand index pointing right. Modern connection. In today's fast-changing world, knowledge ages quickly. Those who stop learning get left behind. Cousins. Humility as a lifelong student is a lesson we desperately need. Backhand index pointing right. Life lesson. Be curious forever. Don't let age, success, or comfort stop your growth. Life itself is the greatest classroom, and every day is a lesson. Glowing star. Conclusion. Victor Cousin's life was not about chasing a single truth, but about weaving truths from many threads. He taught us to respect freedom but to pair it with responsibility. He showed us that education is the foundation of nations, that teachers are sacred, and that culture and history shape who we are. In a divided and restless world, Cousin's voice reminds us, wisdom is not about choosing one side, it's about embracing the best of many, living responsibly, and never stopping the pursuit of learning.